You know, it's a beautiful Sunday morning, and I actually feel sorry for you guys that you're stuck in a hall having to listen to someone like me. I apologize about this. The trouble with being doctors is we have such busy lives that sometimes the only time we can ever figure out what to do is on a Sunday. I'm going to ask all of you one question. Which is the app, which is the most popular app for doctors? Anyone? You're all wrong. The answer is actually WhatsApp. And I think sometimes we forget that we fail to maximize whatever we already have, and we need to make use of it. Now, I understand that WhatsApp was not created as a medical app, but the reality is that most doctors will use it for medical purposes. Whether you want to talk to another cardiologist to find out an opinion on ECG, whether you want to talk to your patients. My only point, and that's the whole point of this lecture, is there is a lot more you can do. You already have this fantastic computer in your pocket. You're using it, but you're underutilizing it. And I'm going to try to help you to make better use of it. I'm going to basically break this up into 4 groups. One, of course, is what makes us doctors, especially as we are professionals. So we need to keep on updating and learning new stuff. Apps are very helpful for that. The second is practice management. We're also businessmen if you run a private practice. The third, of course, is clinical care, which helps us to provide better care to our patients. And finally, what we can use apps for to help our lives to become better. Because even if you're doctors, we're also humans. I think the great thing is if you go to Google Play Store or you go to Apple Store, you will find tons of medical apps. And all of these really act as reference tools. So you don't always have to cram your brain with what is a normal BMI, all that stuff. You know, you need to know the basics, but you can always look it up. That's what I meant about a peripheral brain. The big problem, of course, is that there are just so many apps. And therefore, the question which a lot of people ask us is, which app should I use? And I can promise you at the end of this lecture, the first question everyone's going to ask is, which app should I be using? And my whole point is that start off with WhatsApp. Think about what you're using it for. What else could you be using it for? And then I can promise you there is some smart guy who's devised an app specially for doctors. The answer to this question, really, there is no single answer. You've got to find the answer for yourself. It depends on various things. Do you have an Android or do you have an iOS? Are you willing to pay for your app or do you want something which is free? And sometimes the difference is not that much, but ultimately you get what you pay for. It also is very specialty specific, and that's why there's no point in my telling you what app you should download, because I'm an IVF specialist. If you're a cardiologist, my choices are going to be completely irrelevant. So 2 things I would suggest. Talk to another friend of yours who uses a lot of them. Share notes. I found this helpful. I didn't find this helpful. But at the end of the day, the question is, does the app add any value to your life? If it does, use it. Become very good at using it, and that's the best way to derive maximum value. Having said that I said I wouldn't say which the best app is, I still think you guys should check this out. It's called Omnio. As the name suggests, covers all specialties. It's the single best app for clinical reference use. It's like having a medical textbook, dictionary, encyclopedia, all put together in one. The problem, of course, is that it's a paid app and can really be expensive. But the way I look at it is, if it helps you to provide better care to your patients, if as a result of this app, you become the doctor where everyone calls, hey, I'm not sure what to do with this patient, then I think it's still a worthwhile investment. For example, it gives you the Merck manual, but that's one part which is free, but there are lots of other textbooks which are available on this app. If at the end of the day you get confused and you're still not sure what to do, of course, Google is always there, which is the best app for cardiologists, and you'll get some details. But this is a very useful site. It's called imedicalapps.com, and it'll give you lots of information about what the new apps in the market are, what the reviews are, what works and what doesn't work. I think one of the common things we need is, and we worry about, is we're going to get outdated very quickly. So lots of apps will help you to stay updated with medical news. This is just one of them. So you basically have lots of medical editors who will abstract journals and associations. So this, for example, is MD Plexus. It really doesn't matter. There's, like someone pointed out, Medscape does exactly the same thing. Some of these apps are extremely cleverly done. So I don't think it's fun reading a textbook. It can be very boring, puts you to sleep. And therefore, there's this great app called Clinical Sense. It actually provides you a case of a patient, and it's a clinical scenario. This is a patient who's breathless, who's 70 years old, who has a history of myocardial infarct, who's come in. And then it asks you questions. So effectively, you become the doctor. You're role-playing safely in a scenario, and you have to find out whether you end up killing the patient because you missed the diagnosis, or whether you can save the patient. Can be a lot of fun and keeps you on your toes. But the beauty is that's not all. And the great thing about a touch phone or a smartphone is it's touch. And there are actually these apps. For example, this is called surgical simulation. I'm not saying it allows you to cut open a patient, but it gives you all the various steps which you require. So imagine if you're doing a surgery which you've never done before, or if you have a junior resident and you need to teach them what the steps of the surgery are, this is the kind of app which can help you become a better teacher and make sure that you're doing everything correctly. This, of course, is always a problem. For example, you're not particularly happy, you need to find out what's happening. Someone has created... I always tell people, if you have a problem, it's very unlikely that you're the only guy in the world with the problem. Someone must have had a similar problem, and someone cleverer than you has most likely found a solution for it. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Find out what someone else has done, and there are lots of these apps. This, for example, is Curify. And of course, these are very India-specific apps. This, as we've heard before from Dr. Buch, is where the future is headed. We talk about practice management, simple things like how many appointments, who do I need to see, what do I manage with my patient. And these days, all the electronic medical records are all available on the cloud. And because they're available on the cloud, they all have an app interface, so that even sitting here, I can check what's happening to my patients wherever they are. And the beauty about this is that tomorrow you get a phone call from your nurse saying this patient has got admitted. You can actually check the images, the x-rays, anything you want, it's all at your fingertips. I know people use WhatsApp all the time for something like this, which is great. If it works and you're happy with it, that's fine, continue using it. But if you want to upgrade a little bit, suppose, for example, you want to see all the x-rays over the last 6 months, then WhatsApp is not necessarily a very friendly way of doing it. So someone has thought about it, arranged all the x-rays over a period of time so that it becomes medically much more useful. I think this is important. No doctor ever takes care of a patient all by himself. You have assistants, you have nurses, you have patients' relatives. And the great thing about some of these apps is everyone gets to see exactly what's happening. So I know lots of doctors, for example, have WhatsApp groups for all the clinic members. So that anything happens, okay, this is the task you have to do. Yes, I've finished completing the task. This puts it on a much better platform. We saw a startup discussing this, and these are virtual consultations. So all of us want to make more money all the time, perfectly reasonable. And patients don't want to come to your clinic all the time in order to get their queries answered. So now there are lots of these things. Again, you could very well use video Skype. You could very well use video WhatsApp if what you wanted. But if you want to take your act up to the next level, you want to become a little more sophisticated, then you will have clinical apps which will allow you to do this. I think the next step now, this is the buzzword all over the world, is what we call patient engagement, which means it's not enough for us as a doctor to tell the patient, ye dawai hai, khao, tum ye test hai, karo. Patients want to know what you're doing, why you're doing it. They need to be involved in the treatment. And that's important both for you, for patient satisfaction, and for the patient as well. And therefore, a lot of these apps will allow, just like you can see the records, it'll allow the patient to see the records as well. Can be a little bit scary in the beginning because say, oh God, if the patient sees everything, then will the patient know more than I do? I think it's high time we realize that we can't afford to play this kind of game where we keep all the information to ourselves. Those days have gone. And it's actually far better if you're open and transparent and share information with your patients. Your patients will respect you and you will learn a lot more from them as well. And there's nothing wrong with creating your own app. Patients don't really want to go to 50 different places. The reason you force them to go to Google is because you don't provide them the information they want. Create your own app and they'll be quite happy to download it. And then you can do a lot of conveniences, both for them as well as for your staff. For example, taking appointments, getting refill prescriptions, finding directions, lots of things. We all use WhatsApp for this, and now there are branded apps, so you can discuss cases with colleagues. Now the trouble is often it's just one-on-one. But suppose you want to share a case with 50 different colleagues from all over the world. There are actually apps which will allow you to do that, which I think is brilliant. You can tap into anyone, anywhere. I think patient education is very valuable, and there are lots of apps which allow you to show patients videos, images, so they know exactly what's happening. And you could actually download some of this by doing a Google search yourself, depending on your specialty. We found that lots of patients weren't sure about what was happening to them during their IVF cycle. So we actually created an app for them. From day one, these are the injections, these are when you need to do the scans, these are the blood tests you need to do. Makes their life easier and my life easier as well. Lots of apps now actually allow you to do far more with your phone than just use it as a phone. So for example, this actually allows the doctor to be able to listen electronic stethoscope. So the patient can hear her own heartbeat. There is this app called Peak, which actually allows you to do a fundoscopy. Imagine, you don't need to carry an ophthalmoscope anymore. Having said all this, there are definitely risks. Does this sound familiar? How many spouses are there? How many people are married to doctors, and how many of them think of their husbands being like this? As it is, wives have this common complaint. My husband has no time for me. And now whatever time he has, he spends just looking at his phone. And that's true. I think a big problem is there's just too many apps. You can't find the right one for yourself. It's a small screen size. And my daughters make fun of me, but I'm getting old and it's hard for me actually to read what's happening on the small screen. The user interface is often not great, so sometimes you have to fiddle around with it. Often the design, it's not really designed for doctors. It's designed for computer engineers, so therefore it can be improved. And a lot of these apps are created for the US market. Therefore, there is that huge opportunity. I think it's important, if you want to be seen as a tech-savvy doctor, to actually prescribe apps for your patients, and lots of doctors are doing this. Patients are using these apps anyway. It's far better that you tell them what to do. So for example, if your patients are pregnant, you can actually download an app for them so they can do this fetal monitoring at home. Imagine, she can actually hear her baby's heartbeat, her husband can hear it, her existing children can hear it. That's such an exciting thing for them to be able to do. And similarly, we saw the startup present. You actually now have a smartphone-based ECG monitors so that patients can check their own ECG in case they're worried. So I think the opportunities are immense. A smartphone is not just a computer. It's got sensors, it's got activators. People are keeping on building all kinds of clever things onto it and just going to progressively keep on increasing. And you need to be on top of things. It's very embarrassing when a patient comes and tells you, hey, this is an app I'm using, and you don't have an idea about what that patient is doing. So for example, there's a great company called Propeller Health, which creates apps for asthma patients. All they've done is they've added a sensor to the inhaler. So you can track how many times the patient actually uses the inhaler, how often they use it, where they use it, what makes their attacks worse, what makes it better. Finally, no matter what, we're still human beings at the end of the day, and I think we need to be able to use this smartphone, not just in consume our time. We're much more than just doctors. And there are lots of apps which actually help you become a better human being. There are time management apps, you can slot your day accordingly, you don't waste a lot of time on busy work. And of course, there are apps which help you to exercise. The biggest problem with doctors is we have no work-life balance. We prescribe a lot of things to our patients, and patients make fun of us behind our back because ye bolta exercise karne ko khud to nahi karta hai. He must be at least 20 kilos overweight. So in one sense, what we say has very little credibility with our patients because we don't follow our own advice. So there are apps which will actually help you sleep better. You can track your sleep patterns. That will help you make sure that you're eating properly. Sometimes we think as doctors we know everything, but the reality is we do a very bad job with ourselves as well. And a lot of these apps can help. Big problem is too many apps, and at the end of it you get completely fatigued. And really you want something which will do everything for you in one place, something which is created for your special needs as a doctor. Appointments, calendars, to-do lists, medical reference. And I think this perhaps is the most important slide. Why is that? Because as a doctor, you understand your own pain points, and therefore if you can help a lot of these young startup founders to actually create some of these things, do it for purely selfish reasons. Do it to make your life more productive and helpful. And if you find it helpful, I can promise you your colleagues and friends will find it helpful. And then that's something against, not only will you be helping yourself, you'll be helping your friends, and you'll be helping the founders and definitely their patients as well. Thank you.
Any question from audience?
The audience is still sleeping. I haven't managed to wake them up as yet. Sure. So what is your question? So, in fact, this slide itself is about a year old. There are lots of much cleverer things. Effectively, as I said before, there is the smartphone is acting like a computer platform. What they're doing is they're providing you with ECG leads, which the patient can then add on. So it's not just the smartphone by itself is not enough. You will need to add special sensors created for that particular purpose. The point is that you already have something. So then rather than buy a standalone device, you can just use your smartphone for this thing. Much less expensive because smartphones are so much less expensive. And that's what I meant about lots of clever applications coming up.
When you say writing, you may use anything that suits you or available to you. But if you are using a WhatsApp, can you hear me? Yeah. So if you are using WhatsApp, I would say that if there are 474 messages, the most important message will be lost. And therefore, I request you that I have found that you create for sending information, broadcast list is fine so that they can't get back to you. And for greeting, create a, for example, if it is Sandhya, then her messages will come to me. But I will tell her that you make a group between me and you and your spouse and your children in Australia and America and make Sandhya health. Now once it is Sandhya health, I will always check health first. And my 20 messages out of those 474 will be seen by me. So what I request you to do is to create a group with your patient by children in any part of the world. And you will never miss. And all the records and x-rays and everything chronologically will appear to you. And periodically send it as an email to yourself. Because
So,
ultimately you will overrun the memory.
So I think what Dr. Buch is, he's a power user of WhatsApp as a doctor, which is brilliant. The trouble is lots of us aren't power users. We don't even know how to create a WhatsApp group, for example. This is the opportunity for a clever founder to go and talk to Dr. Buch and show me what you're using WhatsApp for. And then he will add an additional layer. So he will use WhatsApp as a platform, but then create something else which doesn't need to cost much, which will then be designed specifically for the doctor, where he could then break it up into the doctor's personal life, the doctor's clinical uses, the doctor's patients. So I think...
responsive, even I am in touch with for addition of some features, and WhatsApp has been answering. So they themselves are ready to answer because for them we are all in one village.
So next year Dr. Buch is going to show the Dr. Buch WhatsApp Plus application to all you guys, so that along with the WhatsApp, you can then download the Dr. Buch application.
Sir, one last question. The question with patient engagement tools or applications, the concern for doctors is how to moderate the patients, because they are asking too many questions on the application and they are expecting answers for all questions.
So again, as with anything else, it all depends on your practice. If you have junior doctors, then it's possible for you to delegate some of that stuff to your juniors. If you find that you're getting overloaded, I think the trick is to create an FAQ. And it's not like patients want to disturb you. They're being forced to do that because we've not done a good job in answering their questions proactively. So perhaps if we did that, then rather than you have to answer them, you could actually refer them back to the FAQ. I don't think you should think of that as an irritant. The reality is when you're a patient, you're scared. As a patient, I ask lots of stupid questions. In my head, I know that's a stupid question, but I still ask my doctor that stupid question because I want that reassurance for him. Am I an idiot? Yes, but because when I'm sick, I don't necessarily think very rationally. So I think we need to be empathetic that there is no such thing as a stupid question. And if you find that there is an information overload, you need to be able to figure out ways and means of being able to answer it. So some examples are, have some canned responses. So if, it's standard responses, diarrhea, vomiting or whatever else, so you don't necessarily need to keep on doing it. And over time, you'll definitely get better. Don't get irritated. That's all I'm saying. Learn to cope with it.
Thank you, doctor.
As with everything else in life, I don't think there are any simple answers to that question. A lot of it depends on who the relative is. If the relative himself is a doctor, then I think sometimes yes. But even if he's not a doctor, sometimes his uncle could be a cardiologist in the US who shared that information with him. So I think rule number one, respect whatever that person brings. Don't knock it off. Because sometimes doctors can be extremely arrogant and insulting. Ye sab kuch nahi hai. Throw it away. That irritates a patient. And God forbid, if something goes wrong, and we've all been wrong multiple times, it turns out that you were wrong and he was right, he will never forgive you. So I think give him a patient hearing, say, yes, it's possible this could be right, but give me a chance. Since I'm the doctor and since you're paying me for my advice, why don't we try it this way? And I'm happy to listen to your inputs. So again, if you're respectful, I think the patient will be okay. That was my 20 minutes up.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Malpani. Just hold on, sir. I request Devendra Bhai to present a memento to Dr. Malpani.